Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel EcoFix. You can watch this video if you want to understand the chapter, you want simplified flowcharts of the chapter, or if you want to watch a particular topic, you can go to the description down below where I have mentioned all the topics with the respective timings. This video is about chapter 2, Indian economy 1950 till 1990. In the previous chapter we studied how the British policies had certain positive and negative impacts on the different sectors of the economy. In this chapter, we will study how after the Britishers left, Indians formed a planning commission in 1950 headed by Chairman Jawaharlal Nehru, and what goals did they make, what kind of an economy did they choose for India, and the reforms they introduced in the agriculture, industrial and the foreign sector. So there are three types of systems: socialist economy, capitalist economy and mixed economy. What happens in the socialist economy is that the ownership of resources is under the government. Whatever is to be produced, whatever way in which that to be produced and how that will be distributed is totally decided by the government. And the type of goods which are to be produced is based on the idea of the necessity of the people according to the needs of the people. So it's not on the basis of affordability or purchasing power, but it's about the welfare of the people, what they require, what the society needs. Under a capitalist society, the consumer goods, only those consumer goods are produced which are in demand. So market forces of demand and supply decide what type of goods are to be produced. Under this kind of society, the ownership of resources is under the private sector, and it is based on the idea of purchasing power, on the basis of affordability, and less on welfare of people. Now these two ideas in their individuality did not appeal to Jawaharlal Nehru so much. What Jawaharlal Nehru wanted was an economy wherein the benefits of economic prosperity would reach all the sections of society and not just concentrated in a few hands, and also all the people get an opportunity to raise the standard of living by encouraging entrepreneurship or by establishing their own industries and generating employment, a source of income. So he introduced a mixed economic system which is followed in India, mixed economic system wherein the market will provide goods and services which it can according to the market sources of demand and supply, forces of demand and supply, and the government will provide all those essential goods, all those goods which are considered as a necessity to an individual, which the market will fail to provide, maybe at a low price or for free. So India follows mixed economic system. So every economy has certain resources which should be efficiently and optimally utilized, and there is no wastage of those resources, and that can be done with the help of a plan. Then we know how and in what way should we put those resources to use, we can efficiently utilize those. Okay, so a plan is something which spells out how the resources of a nation should be put to use. It can come for 1 marker. Now one more term which was mentioned was perspective planning. So a perspective planning is basically not just a plan, but to attain certain objectives and targets, the perspective plan is divided into smaller plans. For example, we have set a period of 20 years to achieve a certain target. Okay, so we divide that and just imagine that black line to be the period of 20 years, and at the end of those 20 years we have to attain goal A. So now what we do is we divide those 20 years into smaller parts, and we assign those smaller parts a certain period of time and certain targets. So dividing that long period of time into smaller plans will help making that goal A, which is to be achieved in a period of 20 years, easier. So perspective planning is nothing but just dividing that plan into smaller parts. So the long term planning is known as perspective planning. So what India did was perspective planning, wherein they specified the objectives which were to be achieved in 20 years and divided those 20 years into 4 parts of 5 years each. So there were 4 goals of 5 years. जो 4 goals set किए थे government ने by dividing the 20 years into 5 years were growth, modernization, self-reliance and equity. I'll be explaining them in detail, and then you can come back to the slide for a quick recap. Okay. So the first goal is of growth. Now, whenever an economy is growing, or whenever we say that that economy has to grow, what does that growth imply? Growth imply that there has been an increase in the nation's capacity to produce goods and services. So whenever three things are happening, that is, there is an increase in the stock of productive capital, supporting services, and efficiency of the production of capital and services, then we say that the economy is growing. And GDP, gross domestic product, shows the value of the goods and services which are being produced in the nation. All right, so that GDP, when it is rising, it shows that the economy is growing. Now, different sectors contribute to the GDP, and the structural composition is different in different countries. किसी कंट्री में एग्रीकल्चर ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है, किसी कंट्री में इंडस्ट्री ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही है, किसी कंट्री में सर्विस सेक्टर ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है. So that GDP, which shows the value of goods and services in an economy, when there is a steady rise in it, it shows that that economy is growing. So the second goal of the 5-year was modernization, and it has 2 points basically. The first one is to increase the production of goods and services by adopting new technology. So the new technology basically implies a more efficient, a more optimum way of producing the goods and services, and it saves cost, time and money as compared to the previous type of outdated, obsolete machinery. Like for example, in case of a farmer can use HYB seeds, new variety of seeds, instead of using the old ones to increase the production. Or maybe in a factory, they can avoid using the old machinery, the obsolete machinery or the outdated machinery, and use the new technology to increase production. The second aspect is change in the social outlook and recognizing that women should have the same rights as men. Now, of course, we all know this, that in a traditional society, it's always the women who are confined to the domestic work, whereas the men are considered as the bread earners of the family because they are the ones who are actually earning the livelihood. But in a modern society, we should change this outlook and we should make use of the talents women. Both the workforces, when contributing to the GDP, can actually increase the aggregate production in the economy. Hence, by making use of the talents of women in the workplaces like banks, factories, schools, etc., a society can become much more prosperous and grow better than before. So the third goal is of self-reliance, which itself is saying that becoming self-dependent. So every nation has 2 ways to make progress, to promote growth in its country, by using its own resources or by using the resources imported from other nations. But as the goal itself says, self-reliance, becoming self-dependent, becoming self-reliant, India decided to use its own resources and not depend on other nations for its resources. So by using its own resources and by avoiding import of those goods which could be produced within India itself was the main idea of this goal. And it was also considered very important for a country which had just freed from foreign domination to become self-reliant, because again depending on foreign or imported products could make India's autonomy vulnerable to their interference. And interference of the foreign countries in our policy is again not a very good option for us. So it was considered becoming self-reliant and depending not on other countries, especially for food, a very important part, a very important goal at that point. So the last goal is of equity, and the goal of equity emphasizes at the idea of equitable distribution of wealth among the people. You must have heard of rich and poor gap, where all the economic benefits are only concentrated in the hands of a few people who are rich, and the poor population, the poor section of the society is always left behind, who are never able to have access to these benefits. The benefits of economic prosperity never reach the poor sections of the society. So the aim of this goal was to improve the kind of life which people are living, to raise the standards of living, and to ensure that each and every person is able to meet his or her basic needs such as a food, shelter, education, healthcare, and reducing the inequality in the distribution. Now, keeping in mind these four goals, the Planning Commission, it took certain policies, it took certain reforms in the three sectors: agriculture, industrial, and foreign. Let's see how it worked out. So the first thing is the features of agriculture sector between the year 1950 and 1990. These were the six problems that agriculture sector was suffering through, and again to improve these, two policies were taken, land reforms were taken. So let's quickly go through the features. Dependence on monsoon. Now, the lack of irrigation facilities in India made a lot of farmers depend on monsoon for irrigation. The inadequate facilities made the crops vulnerable to a great extent, because if it was a good monsoon, then it was a good harvest. If it was a bad monsoon, it was a bad harvest. So the crops were always at risk. The second one is disguised unemployment. Now, India is suffering through, the agriculture sector of India has always been suffering through this problem, wherein more than the required number of people are working on a farm. Okay? And in many regions, this problem was very high. This disguised unemployment was very high. Traditional methods of production. Now, in India, methods of production of agriculture are very primitive. Most of the people use traditional methods of production, and no new technology was introduced. No new methods were actually even made accessible to people. Sometimes, even if they were, people were so illiterate and they had so little access to them that they could not use it. So they were still using the traditional methods of production, which limited their production to only subsistence farming. The fourth one is low agricultural production. So, because the agricultural productivity in India was very low as compared to the developed countries, most of the regions, their per unit production was much more below than the international levels. And this low level of agriculture return may be attributed to the lack of information, lack of technology again, and lack of access to such technology among the farmers. The fifth one is subsistence farming. Most of the parts of the India have had subsistence farming at that point of view, alright? And the farmers, they used to own a very small piece of land and grow crops just to fulfill the needs of their family and consume the entire farm production, and a very little surplus was left with them which they could sell in the market. So there was a very limited level of, or there was a very little extent to which commercialization of agriculture was there. Hence, the income remained very limited in the hands of the people. The last one is conflicts between tenants and landlords. As I have already told you, there was amindas, there were intermediaries who would extract a large amount of sum from the tenants of the soil, thus exploiting them, and hence leaving them in a very miserable condition in which they could not even afford their basic necessities. This conflict between them discouraged them to produce less, and hence the productivity remained low. So the policies were, first was, there were two policies which were taken in the agricultural land area part, and then there were technical reforms as well. So there was land reforms and there was land sealing. Under technical reforms, there was green revolution, introduction of insecticides and pesticides, fertilizers, and research institutes. Let's talk about first land. So talking about land reforms, we say to bring equity in agriculture, what happened was the ownership had changed from the landlord to the actual tiller of the soil. So the intermediary was abolished and land was given to the person who was actually working to grow crops on that land. And it was based on the idea that once the actual cultivators, the actual tillers have the land in their hands, they can earn profit with it because they don't have to pay any more money to the intermediary, to the zamindar. They can earn money out of it, they can make profit out of it, and then again invest that money in the agricultural land to increase the output and hence increase the income consistently. But again, there were disadvantages to the system because of two reasons. First one was that in certain cases, there were tenants who were evicted from their land. The landlords, they evicted the tenants and they claimed themselves to be the owner of the land. Okay, thus claiming the ownership of the land. जो एक्चुअल टिलर्स थे उनको उनकी लैंड से बाहर निकाल दिया, और जो इंटरमीडियरी था उसने बोला कि मैं ही इस ज़मीन पे काम करता हूँ, आई एम द एक्चुअल टिलर ऑफ द सॉइल एंड आई विल क्लेम द ओनरशिप ऑफ दैट लैंड. The second one was that sometimes even when the tillers got the land in their names, the land piece was so small, the agricultural laborers were also so poor that they could not benefit from the land reforms, since they did not have much money to invest in it or grow that much amount of crops which they could sell in the market. They could not make a surplus out of it. So the second one is land ceiling, which was again to promote equity in agriculture sector, equity in the distribution of land. So the government, what they did was they fixed a maximum size of land which could be owned by an individual, and if that individual was owning more than that amount of land, then the government would take that land, extra surplus land from him, and then allocate it further among the landless laborers. And this was done to reduce the concentration of the ownership of land among a few hands. वो बड़ी बड़ी ज़मीन लेकर रख लेते थे और फिर देते नहीं थे. So what the government did was to ensure equitable distribution of land, they introduced land ceiling. But again, it had to face a lot of hurdles. The first one was that the big landlords, they challenged this land ceiling, their legislation in the courts, and it delayed its implementation. And this time delay, they used this delay to register that surplus land in the names of their close relatives, in the name of their close family labels, thus escaping the legislation, keeping the land with themselves and not implementing the process. The second one was there were some people who exploited the system by making use of the loopholes and retaining the lands in their hand. Also, in some states, the third problem was the government was less committed. In some states, it was more. So, states like Kerala and West Bengal, where the government states had committed to the policy, the land ceiling was a very good system and equity was actually achieved in those regions. But again, in some other states where the government was not committed, no changes were made, and equity, vast inequality still exists today as well. Under technical reforms, there were 4 reforms. The first one is Green Revolution. What happened was that HYV seeds, high yielding variety seeds, were introduced, which suddenly boosted the production process. There was a large increase in the production of food grains like wheat and rice by using HYV seeds. There were some merits and demerits which we will study in the next slide. The second one is insecticides and pesticides. Now the crops, they were prone to be attacked by insects and pests, and the farmers, they could not afford insecticides and pesticides at that time. So the government, what they did was they provided subsidies. They provided the insecticides and pesticides at low cost to them, which would actually prevent the crops from being ruined. The third one is fertilizers. Now, to increase the production in a reduced time, fertilizers were used. They would enhance the production of the farmers, but again they were very expensive, so the government would provide subsidies on fertilizers and provide them at low cost so that the low or the poor sections of the farmers could benefit from it. The fourth was Research Institute. Government had set up research institutes so that they could come up with better techniques of production. They could come up with better quality of soil in which the crops could be produced, a new variety of seeds, and hence again making use of scientific techniques which would boost the production process. Talking about Green Revolution, there are merits and there are demerits. The first merit is increased marketed surplus. Now the farmers, they earlier used to produce only for farm needs. Talking about green revolution, there are merits and certain demerits. The first merit is increased marketed surplus. So the increased market surplus implies that earlier the farmers, they used to grow only for crops for only consumption needs, for family needs, for subsistence farming. But now, due to increased production of wheat and rice, they had enough surplus in their hands which could be sold in the market. So the portion of the produce which was sold in the market is called as marketed surplus, and with that money which they got by selling the surplus, they could have increased disposable income and further invest that income in the agricultural land to further increase the productivity. The second one is decrease in the prices of food grains. Now, there were some people at that point who were not so economically well off and could not easily afford food grains. But due to the increased production and for consequent decline in the prices, these people could easily afford food now, and hence not spend large percentage of their income on food, on buying food grains. The third one is buffer stock. The government was actually able to maintain a sufficient amount of food grains for in case of times of distress, in case of natural calamity, famines. Okay, so buffer stock would be maintained by the government. And the last one is self-sufficiency. Since there was increased production and the government was able to maintain a buffer stock, they were now not any more dependent on foreign countries for food grains, and they had become self-sufficient, self-dependent. There were certain demerits. The first one is regional growth. Now, at some places, there were people who were able to access the HIV seeds and there was increased production, but at some places, the HIV seeds were not available, and this led to regional inequality because in certain regions, there was green revolution, but in others, they still remain backwards. The second one is limited crops. The green revolution, the HIV seeds remain limited to only a few food grains like wheat and rice, and others like cash crops were not being grown in that much quantity. Neither did the government had actually incentive for them. So the crops of increased production of crops remained to only a few food grains. Limited population, again, as I told you, there were rich farmers, there were poor farmers, but only the rich farmers were able to afford the HIV seeds. Now, not only affording HIV seeds is a matter, but when you're growing crops with the help of HIV seeds, it requires the use of expensive inputs like fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides. So, there was only limited population of the farmers who could actually afford growing seeds crops with the help of HIV seeds. The last one is unequal growth. Like, it's the gist of the entire thing, that because in some regions the HIV seeds were accessible and some were not, only the rich farmers were able to access HIV seeds and were able to benefit from the green revolution, others were not able to. Hence, there was unequal growth and there remained a gap between the rich farmers and the poor farmers, thereby violating the goal of equity. But the government had taken steps to overcome the demerits of the green revolution by providing the farmers loans at low rate of interest, by providing subsidized fertilizers to them, and by providing research institutes who would actually come up with better techniques to grow with them, hence reducing the risk of small farmers' crops being ruined when there was a pest attack or when there was any other attack. When the government provided subsidies on fertilizers to the farmers, there were some people who were against it, some who were in favor. Let's look at the arguments which were in favor. The first one was to provide incentive to farmer. Now, this new technology of HIV seeds was looked upon by the small farmers and farmers in general as very risky. So, to provide an incentive to the farmers to test this new technology, the subsidies are provided. The second one was not only affording HIV seeds was the problem, but again it required the use of increased and expensive inputs. So to make it much more affordable for the very poor and the poor farmers of the country, the government had to provide subsidies. The third one was growth with equity. Now, eliminating subsidies would again bring the country to a situation where only the rich farmers, the rich section of the farmers, is benefiting from the green revolution, whereas the poor sections are not being made a part of it, who are being left behind, right? So the government decided that it was really necessary to provide subsidies so that not only rich but poor could also enjoy the benefits of green revolution. Against. Now, the people who were against it said that once the incentive was provided and the farmers had tested the technology and they got to know that it was not as risky as they thought, the purpose has been served. And once the purpose has been served, the subsidies should be phased out. The second point that they put up in front of the government was that in any case, even when the subsidies were being provided, the inputs, the subsidies were not made accessible to the poor sections of the people. So in any case, whether they were being provided or whether they were not being provided, only the prosperous farmers were being benefited by it. And hence, it became, providing subsidies became a burden on the government finances. So if the target group was not being benefited, then what was the point of providing subsidies? Right? So these are the points of favor and against. It is important, it comes in exam. So industrial sector changes were also there. Industrial policy resolution was introduced in 1956, which emphasized on the licensing part and the threefold classification. Also, small scale industry was seen as a good opportunity for development in the rural areas and became very prominent. Let's see in detail. Under IPR 1956, there were two changes that were made: threefold classification and licensing. Under the threefold classification, there was first category under which the industries were owned by only the government. 100% share सिर्फ government का था. There was a second category where the private sector was supplementing the efforts of the government and the government was taking the sole responsibility for starting the new units. Government एक unit setup करेगी, private sector सिर्फ उसकी help करेगा. The third category where the industries were owned only by the private sector, 100% share सिर्फ private sector का था. The second change was licensing, wherein no industry was allowed if they did not get a license from the government. They could not expand their production, volume नहीं increase कर सकते थे और diversify नहीं कर सकते थे अपनी production. That means they cannot change their lines or basically introduce new lines in their business unless they get permission from the government. And why was this happening? Because the government wanted to ensure that not more than the required amount of goods which are required by the economy are being produced in the economy. जितने required capacity है, जितनी required need है economy की, सिर्फ उतने ही goods आए economy में, उससे ज़्यादा ना आए. One thing was that to ensure regional equality, the government ensured that easy license was being, basically a license was easily made when the industry was being set up in a backward region, and there were a lot of concessions like tax concession or less electricity bill or relaxation in the water bill was provided in case the industry was being set up in a backward area, only to maintain regional equality. Second reform under the industrial sector was the small scale industry. Now in 1955 there was this committee called Curve Committee, or the village and small scale industry, which thought of this possibility of using the small scale industry for promoting the development in the rural areas. Now at that point the people did not have a lot of money to invest in industries. अब वो एकदम से कहीं से 5 crore तो नहीं ला सकते ना, and they can invest and start their own business. So what they did was they started this thing of small scale industry where less investment was required and people in rural areas could start their own industry so that they can have an employment opportunity. So a small scale industry is defined with reference to the maximum investment allowed on the asset of a unit. एक maximum investment जो तुम एक asset पे कर सकते हो, उस idea को ध्यान में रखते हुए they introduced this concept of small scale industry, and it was more beneficial for the nation, beneficial for the people, because first of all it was less expensive, it required less investment. Earlier it was the investment was 5 lakh. At present maximum investment allowed in a small scale industry is of 1 crore, till 1 crore basically. And secondly, why was it beneficial? Was because it was labor intensive. Generally there are industries where there are machinery which are producing goods, so their labor, their employment is not so much. But in small scale industries, they were labor intensive, they used more labor than the machinery stuff, which helped in increasing and generating the employment. Small scale industries were a good idea, but still they had to face a lot of competition from the big industrialists, from the large firms, and the government made efforts for them to be shielded, to protect them from this competition from large firms. So the government took 2 steps to do that. First step was that the government reserved a certain amount or certain products, number of products for the small scale industry only. And the second was that they were also given concessions like lower excise duty and low interest rates on bank loans, so that setting up a small scale industry was easier, and they also did not face a lot of competition from the large firms. There were mainly 2 reforms in the foreign sector. The first one is tariffs. Tariffs were like a tax which were imposed on the imported products, making them expensive and hence discouraging their use. The second one is quotas. Quotas specified a certain quantity of goods which could be imported. So basically, if the government said only 100 is the maximum limit of machinery that can be imported, then you cannot exceed that category. It would limit the use of imports, limit importing. The reason was that at that point of time, India was not so developed. It was in the early stages of development, even developing. So they were not in a position to compete with the goods produced by the developing economy. So to reduce that burden of competition on them, the government had introduced tariffs and quotas. Also, if they were given enough time to learn, given enough course of time, then they would learn competing with the developed countries and hence would gain momentum in this competition rat race basically. The third one is that they feared that the entire foreign exchange could be spent on import of luxury products if no restrictions were put on it. So there were 3 reasons for introduction of tariffs and quotas. You should know it. So the introduction of tariffs and quotas had a good positive impact on the industrial sector. The first one is increase in GDP. The GDP increased from 11.8% in 1950 to 24.6 in 1990, which is a good increase. The second one is diversification in the industrial sector. Since the industries were no longer dependent on the foreign sector, the foreign countries, and all the varied needs of the people, the domestic people, had to be met by the domestic industries only. It helped to diversify the industrial sector, and the industries were not only restricted to cotton, jute, textiles, but many other industries were introduced. The third one is promotion of small scale industries. Now obviously becoming big industrialist was a big problem, because now no one could actually bring 5 crore rupees in one go, right? So it provided opportunities to those who did not have a lot of capital to start large firms, but by introducing a small capital of amount, they would start a small scale industry, generate employment, and have a good business and a good source of income. The third one is development of indigenous sectors. Areas of electronics and automobile sectors were developed in the economy which otherwise could not have been developed, since the needs of the people were being fulfilled by the local people only. So, the development of the indigenous sector was only possible due to the policy of self-reliance. Critical sector of the performance of the public sector enterprises. Now, even though there were certain private sector, but again, public sector always has some problems. Let's look into it. The first one is the inefficient performance. What happened was that there were certain sectors which were reserved for only the state enterprises, okay, and the private sector was not allowed in those sectors. Because the private sector was not allowed and only the state government would provide those services, there was lack of competition in the market, and because of this lack of competition, it led to inefficient performance of the public sector enterprises. For example, telecommunication service. What happened was people had to stand in long lines to get a connection. So this caused a lot of inconvenience, and it also was no longer required, but which still continued. The second one is unnecessary drain on nation's wealth. There was indiscriminate spread of public sector enterprises because there were industries in which private sector could enter. For example, the private sector could manufacture bread, they could provide hotel services, hospitality services, but the government would not allow them to intervene in the sectors which it reserved for itself. They would monopolize those sectors. So scholars argued that government should concentrate its resources on the important services which the private sector could not provide, and let private sector handle those services. In this way, the government could have an optimum utilization of resources and improve the services provided by it. So there was an unnecessary drain of the resources of the nation because the government would not allow the private sector to intervene in the industries, in the industrial sector. Last point is wastage of resources. Now, there were many public sector enterprises which were not so economically well off. They were not functioning properly and they incurred huge losses, but still they were allowed to function because it was difficult for the government to close that enterprise because it would then lead to a lot of unemployment. So this also led to a lot of wastage of resources. The uneconomically viable PSCs continued and wasted the resources of the nation. Also, not only that, but private sectors were there were some private companies which were facing losses. Some of them were closed, but again some of them were nationalized just to protect the jobs and not generate a lot of unemployment. So it wasted the resources of the nation. The industrial and trade policies had positive impacts on the society, but in certain ways it also had its drawbacks. The first one is permanent license charge. So a big industrialist, now we all know that obtaining a license is very important for starting a new firm, to establish a new industry. But a big industrialist would get a license not for starting a new firm, but to prevent others from starting a new firm. दूसरों को लाइसेंस नहीं मिलता था because they would obtain a license and they would then prevent the competition in the market by not letting the competitors enter in the market. So this excessive regulation, it prevented certain firms from becoming more efficient or even from starting new firms. So more time was spent by the industrialist on trying to obtain a license than to spend that same time on improving their products. The second point is less choice for consumers. Tariffs and quotas were introduced to protect small industries, small scale industries from foreign competition, okay? And in this way it could actually help those small scale industries to produce goods and services and to increase their sales in the market, since they would not get competition from the foreign products. But again, because there were no foreign products, there were no imported products. The market was limited to only the domestic products, the goods which were produced by the domestic industries. So there was a very less variety of products which was available to them, and these few choices was also affecting the quality of products that they were purchasing, because there were only a few choices and the quality of those goods were also not good. The third point is no incentive to improve quality. So due to restriction on imports, the producers knew that the consumers of Indian market, they had to buy what was being sold in the market, क्योंकि बाहर से तो products आएंगे नहीं, imported products आएंगे नहीं. So they knew that they had to purchase whatever was available in the market. So they had no incentive to improve the quality of their goods, because they knew कि इनको जो मिलेगा उनको वही खरीदना पड़ेगा. तो वो क्या करते थे, they would sell low quality products at high prices, and they would not pay heed to ethics of the market. Critical appraisal of the policies in the three sectors. So the positive was that industrial sector it became much more diversified as compared to the situation of independence, because India was self-dependent. It had to fulfill the needs by producing the goods within the nation. This helped in diversifying the industries. The second one is self-sufficiency in food. Due to Green Revolution, there was increased production of food grains. It helped the government to maintain a buffer stock for the times of distress. So it helped to become self-sufficient and not depend on other nations for food. Third one is land reforms. That is, the land reforms resulted in abolition of the zamindari system. The tillers got the land in their names. They could have increased disposable income, which consequently increased the production, as they could invest more in their land now. There were certain negative aspects as well. So the first one is performance of PSUs. There were uneconomically viable PSUs which continued to function. There was indiscriminate spread of PSUs because the state government continued to reserve certain sectors for the public sector and did not allow the private sector to intervene. So this prevented the growth of entrepreneurship within the nation and restricted a lot of good opportunities for the people in the society. The second one was no incentive to the industries. Now, because tariffs and quotas were introduced, and in the name of self-reliance, the producers were protected against the foreign competition, right? This had a negative impact because then they became arrogant, and they knew that the people had to buy whatever they produced. They had a captive market and they did not have any other choice. So they sold low quality products at high prices, exploiting the consumers, and did not improve the quality of the products. The third one is inward policy. Since the government of India promoted the idea of producing the goods within the nation and not depending on others, also at this point of time they were not actually allowing foreign countries to intervene within the policies of the home country. They developed a good way of self-reliance. They developed a good system of depending on themselves, but they could not develop a strong export sector which could have actually earned them good amount of foreign exchange. Well, that's about it then. Thank you so much guys for watching this video. If this video was helpful to you, make sure you give this video a big fat thumbs up, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.